A 625-meter deck drop, resilience down to -30°C, a 10-second rocket, short pilot line, and millimeter-level assembly precision. Behind those numbers is a human decision to build where the world says no. These extreme figures open the legend of 10 world-class bridges. And the biggest monster today is hiding at number 2, where snow mountains, an earthquake belt, and deep freeze cold get welded into one brutal location. Top 10. Pingtang Bridge, China. The moment the aerial shot pulls back, you see 3 diamond-shaped pylons like giant pillars, holding the deck steady across a cloud. Wrapped canyon. If you stand by the edge and look down, the river at the bottom becomes a thin silver thread, and the cars look like sesame seeds. This is not normal height. The deck sits 332 meters above the valley floor, about the height of a 110-story skyscraper. The canyon airflow under your feet is like an invisible hand that always wants to give vehicles a shove. The extreme part is hiding in the wind. Chaotic canyon turbulence can reach 8 meters per second, basically a constant level -5 wind. Engineers installed active wind dampers, like strapping a stabilizer onto the bridge, keeping the sway down to the centimeter level. The key construction shot is in the catwalk installation. Workers first used helicopter towing to pull a pilot line across the canyon, then followed that line to lay a catwalk, only 1.2 meters wide. This is the lifeline for the whole build. After that, they pulled the main cables, then lifted the deck section by section. The whole process like walking a tightrope in the clouds. After the bridge opened to traffic, a trip that once required a 3-hour detour now takes only 40 minutes. Top 9. Eshima Ohashi Bridge, Japan. From the side, it looks less like a bridge and more like a steep ramp, stabbing straight into the sky. The maximum grade is 6.1%. As you drive up, the hood nearly points into the horizon line. From the top looking down, sea and roadway seem to merge into a single line, and you instantly understand that this is not a normal bridge. The extreme part is not height, but the unconventional shape to let large fishing boats pass underneath. The deck had to rise to an elevation of 44 meters, about a 15-story building, but both shores are flat, so the connection had to be done with a steep grade, which is a major stress test for load, bearing and stability. So the engineers used a pre-stressed concrete continuous girder structure, cast segment by segment to balance force differences caused by the grade. Each segment had its casting error controlled to the millimeter level. Early after opening, the steep grade triggered jokes online that it felt like driving up a cliff, and some new drivers were afraid to use it. Later, officials added speed bumps and visual guidance signage, and it gradually became accepted. From the observation area at the top, you can watch fishing boats moving slowly under the bridge, while cars flow above. 2 transport layers in a strange and perfect echo. The main span is 144 meters, not particularly huge, but this roller coaster profile is one of a kind in the bridge world. Top 8. Royal Gorge Bridge, United States. This suspension bridge sits deep inside the Red Canyon landscape of Colorado. The red rock walls drop 321 meters. Walk across, and you can clearly see fractures in the canyon below. The transparent viewing platform alone is enough to make anyone with fear of heights back away. When it was built in 1929, there was no heavy machinery. Workers relied on ropes hanging over the canyon while unstable winds could sweep them toward the rock wall at any moment. The geology is soft red sandstone, which makes foundations difficult to anchor. Faced with that environment, engineers first cut deep slots into the cliff faces on both sides, then poured concrete anchorages. After that, they used manpower to pull the main cables across the canyon. The deck was assembled from wooden planks, and every single plank was carried by hand. After completion, it became a landmark of the American West, shrinking a 3-hour detour around the canyon to a 2-minute crossing, and boosting local tourism. From completion until 2003, it held the title of the highest suspension bridge in the world for 73 years. Today, it is a pedestrian-only bridge. As you walk, you can feel a slight sway, and wind rushing through the gaps between deck planks makes a low moaning sound. The main cable span is 286 meters. A century ago, that was like hanging a bridge across a canyon with bare hands. Top 7. Chenab Rail Bridge, India. This is a place humans were never meant to build in. Deep inside the Himalayas, near Riyasi, the temperature can swing from 50 degrees Celsius down to freezing in a brutal drop. Look around, and it is nothing but jagged cliffs and sheer rock faces carved into gorges that feel bottomless. Now picture what it takes to build a record. Breaking bridge here. The Chenab Railway Bridge in India did exactly that, forcing a steel corridor through a landscape that fights back at every step. And it is not just the terrain and the temperature. This region is a double hell of geology and weather. Shattered rock everywhere. Strong earthquakes hitting again and again, and violent winds up to 266 kilometers per h driving ice and snow straight into the work zone. In this kind of no-go zone, builders spent 23 years breaking the problem open with a flexible approach of designing while building. Around 27,000 tons of steel became a 467-meter main span steel truss arch. With precise cantilever assembly and cable lift operations, the arch ribs met high in the air with millimeter-level closure accuracy. This mega project, known as the highest railway arch bridge in the world, is far more than a piece of transport infrastructure. It also changed daily life in Jammu and Kashmir and tying the region into the national rail network. Travel time has been cut by half, and a once isolated landscape now has a direct track into modern development. Top 6. Shuangbao Grand Bridge, China. Deep mountain gorges, carved by karst terrain, often hide the hardest infrastructure problems. Shuangbao Grand Bridge rose in exactly that kind of natural fortress, cutting through barriers that looked permanent. This is not a high plateau job site with brutal cold and constant gale winds. The threat here is limestone geology. The area is a classic karst mountain region. Broken rock layers, underground caverns everywhere, and a gorge that slices the terrain into a W-shaped profile. Finding a stable construction platform is extremely difficult. A 320-meter vertical drop makes ground transport feel almost impossible. To protect this original, untouched landscape, builders abandoned the standard approach of carving temporary access roads into the mountains. Instead, a transportation route was constructed above the canyon. This 1,620-meter long double-span continuous arch bridge did more than cross a canyon. It also earned one of the highest honors in bridge engineering, the Gustav Lindenthal Award, often compared to a Nobel-level prize in the bridge world. 4 years of construction meant 4 years of daily negotiation with nature, turning the impossible into the real. It solved one of the toughest balancing acts humanity faces, building big while leaving the landscape standing. Top 5. Hussaini Suspension Bridge. This bridge, known as the Hussaini Suspension Bridge, crosses the Hunza River in northern Pakistan. Total length is about 190 meters. The deck is less than 1 meter wide and made from fewer than 400 wooden planks linked together. Below runs a river fed by glacier meltwater, with water temperatures staying around 5 degrees Celsius year-round. In the distance stands Pashukone at 6,106 meters above sea level. The deck sits about 30 meters above the river. It is not extremely high, but the extreme part is fragility and disorder. The steel cables are old and poorly maintained. The planks often loosen, and canyon gusts can make the deck swing violently. Accidents have occurred where broken planks caused people to fall. It has no complex construction method. Local villages hand tension the cables and replace planks as needed. It is the only crossing route for mountain residents. The bridge was first built in the late 1960s to connect about 200 local households. In 2010, a massive landslide created at Abad Lake and changed the transport routes in the region, after which the bridge was reinforced. Today, it has become a bridge that tests courage. Top 4. Millau Viaduct. France. It is one of the highest cable, stayed bridges in the world. Like a giant harp standing in a gorge in southern France, 7 pairs of stay cables are arranged symmetrically, blending beauty with strength. Look up from the base of the pylons and you instantly understand that this is not a normal cable, stayed bridge. The bridge sits near the foothills of the Alps, where winter temperatures can drop to -20 degrees Celsius, and snow and ice can coat the cables. To deal with extreme cold, the cables are wrapped with a special anti-freeze coating. The pylon foundations go 30 meters deep into rock to resist snow load pressure and potential avalanche impact. Construction used balanced cantilever segment assembly, stitching from both sides toward the center. Each segment weighs 300 tons and was placed with giant tower cranes, with alignment error controlled within centimeters. The build was not smooth from the start. Early designs were criticized for pylons that were too tall and for potentially harming the gorge ecosystem. After multiple refinements, a consensus was reached. After 3 years, it opened to traffic, and the drive from Paris to Montpellier was shortened to 1 hour. With an artistic form, it conquered an extreme wind environment and became a bright line crossing the clouds. Top 3. Siduhe Bridge, China. Main span is 1,100 meters. The deck sits 496 meters above the valley floor. If you drop a stone from the deck, it takes 8 seconds to hit the bottom. Vehicles crossing look like they are drifting in the clouds. The extreme part is that the gorge is too wide and the terrain is too dangerous. Both sides are vertical cliffs, so there is no way to build temporary access routes, and the canyon is windy and foggy with very low visibility. It sits deep in the folded mountains of southwestern Hubei. In a steep and complex gorge like this, the hardest problem for a suspension bridge is how to get the pilot line across. They pioneered rocket, launched pilot, line delivery, using a rocket to carry the pilot line across the canyon. In just 10 seconds, the rope reached the far side, solving the problem of crossing an impossible void. Then they laid the catwalk along the pilot line, and the breakthrough unlocked the whole build. During construction, heavy fog once caused catwalk workers to lose orientation and become trapped at high altitude for 5 hours, later rescued with drone positioning. After opening, the route from Enshi in Hubei to Chongqing was shortened by 4 hours. The rocket-based pilot line method for large span suspension bridges filled a technical gap for building across deep mountain gorges. Top 2. Hålogaland Bridge, Norway. It crosses the Tromsø Strait near the Arctic Circle. The deck is 120 meters above sea level. Around it is glacial terrain, and the bridge blends into ice and water with a stark, epic feel. Building here means facing -30 degrees Celsius cold, violent winds and blizzards, and an earthquake belt, plus freeze, thaw action from seawater that can erode foundations. So engineers used the caisson method for foundations, sinking massive concrete caissons into seabed rock. They also applied special antifreeze coatings on steel to prevent low-temperature brittleness. For winter concreting, they used steam heating to keep curing stable and quality consistent. Before opening, crossing meant relying on ferries, and in winter, the sea could freeze and suspend ferry operations, causing major travel disruption. After the bridge opened in 2018, it turned the small Arctic city of Tromsø into a transport hub. It also built a never-icing corridor through an extreme environment. Top 1. Huajiang Canyon Bridge, China. It is currently the highest bridge in the world. Total length is 2,890 meters. The deck is 625 meters above the valley floor, like stacking 2 Eiffel Towers. It crosses a deep canyon in the mountains of Guizhou and Yunnan, with steep rock walls on both sides. From far away, vehicles look like ants crawling. From the deck looking down, the canyon becomes a hair, thin line, clouds drifting under your feet, and your sense of height breaks. The hardest part is the terrain. There is no stable platform on either side, and the valley floor cannot host any support structure. That means traditional construction methods fail completely here. Engineers had to move the work into the air. Steel girders, weighing thousands of tons, were slid and positioned in midair using canyon traction systems. Every shift had to stay within millimeter. Level error. This is a method that only shows up when extreme terrain forces it. The entire build cycle was under 4 years. In bridge history, seeing this speed, this scale together. Before the bridge, vehicles had to wind around the mountains for hours. After opening, crossing the canyon takes only 2 minutes. In Guizhou, where karst and canyons cut the land into fragments, Huajiang Canyon Bridge solves not just a short traffic pinch point, but a natural barrier that blocked regional development for decades. These bridges have long outgrown the role of simple transportation tools. Every one of them tells a story where impossible becomes possible. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. See you next time.